you look at the evolution, if you look at the Sensex constituents from over the decades, and you go back 2-3 decades back, it was heavily dominated by industrials. Today, it's more services, financials and others. Would you hazard a guess how things will look like in 10, 20 years from now?
Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball. In this financial year, which is yet to get completed, already we have raised around ₹1 trillion in the main board IPOs. And around ₹1 trillion is already approved, and the companies are waiting to come into the market at the appropriate time, part of the pipeline. And another ₹1 trillion which is applied to the regulators and awaiting approval.
Is there a change in appetite between commodities, mostly precious metals and stocks? Do you think that is something to watch for?
So here I am a bit skeptical about my own answer.
Welcome. This is the Moneynomics podcast from Axis Asset Management Company. What we want to do here is just go to sector experts, deep dive, get an understanding of what's going on in the economy and where to start. Where better to start in the new year than with Mr. Ramamurthy at BSE. He's a veteran of the markets. He's been with BSE. He was worked previously with NSE. He's been working with banks, or career spanning close to 40 years now. Formally, welcome to Axis Asset Management. You've been in this business, financial services in India for about 40 years now. And the company you're representing very famously has a Sensex going for about 40 years. Nice coincidence, career plus what you represent as an organization. Let me kick from there. Sensex at 40. Key takeaways, what are your thoughts?
See, an index, as we all understand, if it is a market index, to start with, is a representative of the market. It has 30 securities, but it represents the entire market because it has representations from all the sectors of the economy. Therefore, if you extend it, it represents the economy in itself. The second important point any index represents is it's a portfolio, and in this case, it's a well-diversified portfolio. When we talk of a well-diversified portfolio, two things come out. The correlation of its return should be, its return, if you look at the correlation with the total market, entire market if you take and you find its return, the correlation should be very high. And the diversifiable risk in a portfolio of this nature should be as minimal as possible. Sensex is one such index, and over a period of this 40 years, it has not only started getting thought about as a barometer, and even people who do not understand capital market or the index creation, if they want to know how the market is behaving, because it gives a sort of a sense of well-being for everybody if the economy is doing well. If they want to know whether the economy is doing well or not, is an inquisitiveness for any common man. He thinks of looking at Sensex. To that extent, it has grown. From a meager level, today we are talking about 85,000 as a number. So clearly it indicates how the economy has grown over a long period, and therefore giving a lot of sense of satisfaction for people. And as a portfolio, being well suited for passive investments, around 22 funds with around 2.5 trillion rupees, this is what Sensex today represents. It's actually Sensex is equal to a common man's understanding of market.
Yes.
That's how I look at it.
And absolutely right. My own first brush of it was perhaps in the early 90s, which is when I think all of this burst into sort of reality for many Indians. I was still in school. Obviously, very different environment for you, because I think you were in the pioneer in that time also in terms of the exchange market. You had started with NSE, I think at that time, early to mid 90s. Digital transformation, lots of things have happened. And I think we are in another digital transformation right now. Looking back over this last, let's say, 30 years, where do you think we are going from here? I think this retail participation has grown by leaps and bounds. Where are we going from here? What is it that drives exchanges?
For a moment, let us look at the past, and then let us get into the future. In the past, a stock exchange was clearly meant for private wealth creation. It is by the brokers, for the brokers and of the brokers, where they were pioneers in making money for themselves and for their clients. Today, that is not the role of a stock exchange. It has come a long way away from that. Today, we are talking of public good. We are talking of capital formation, risk transfer, liquidity, transparency, democratization of access to markets, democratization of access to information, trust. These are all what we are talking about when we are talking of market. This has happened mainly because the exchanges and this index have seen lot of cycles of growth, lot of cycles of reforms, lot of issues, lot of crises, and has survived all of them and come up.
Yeah.
In the process, an open outcry market where the stock exchange was restricted to a hall, thanks to the telecom revolution,
Yes.
first went into the broker's office and then to the client's office in the form of a laptop, and today it is in his pocket in the form of a mobile application. This transformation in itself is very big. Having said that, with all the retail boom in the last 5-6 years, the number of retail investors growing in, have we financialized enough? Have we financially penetrated enough into the market, into the country? The answer appears to be negative, clearly giving a huge scope for us to go further. Even today, even if it is a Ponzi scheme or even if it is something which is a fake gold scheme, our people unfortunately go and put money there and lose their money. So clearly, financial assets as an important part of their portfolio is not known to many people. So while we talk about 23 crores of unique client codes, 13 crores of individual investors, all that we talk, country is very big. With a median age of 28-29, 65% of the population in income earning age. I think we have a very, very, very long way to go, and technology is going to aid further and further in our capability to penetrate into the market. And I am sure in the years to come, with the great guidance of our policy makers and the regulators, we will be able to achieve it. And I feel that time the market will be far, far, far different and far bigger than what today we are seeing.
Also deviate slightly away from just the retail trading part to one of the other core features of capital markets, which is listing and helping companies raise money. And maybe, it'll be helpful if you can just look at two parts to this. One is the traditional role of exchanges, which is to raise risk capital. And maybe you could also expound on the recent trend where we have had, a lot more PE exits and type of listings have changed, and what do you think is going on right now?
Evolution is a part of mankind. The way we used to send money and today the way we are sending money is different, right? I'm sure collection checks and clearing checks you would have seen in your lifetime.
Sure.
If it is a local check, it will take 2 days for you to get the money, and if it is an outstation check, it will be sent for collection. It will take 3 days minimum, 5 days probably. Today it is all a wink of an eye. Even before the banks settle the amounts between themselves, if I send my money from my bank into your bank, which is very different for your account, you get the credit and utilize it also. When such evolutions happen, the sectors change, the participants change. Today it is the age of new economy companies. Lot of supply chains and different ways of dealing supply chains are coming into existence. Gone are those days when people used to go home hurriedly and cook food and eat. Today on the way they order food, and when they reach home the food is already waiting for them. That is the new evolution of the new economy. And artificial intelligence, lot of companies coming in, making lots of money, coming into listing. I think the trend is towards new age companies. and more risky capital people bringing in with a clear confidence into the economy that they will be able to make further strides and progress. That's what is the trend that I am seeing.
So do you see that in the mix between private capital and exchange-based fundraisers, is that both, or is it substantially now, a lot of new age funding we have seen are being, sort of funded by private capital and then eventually come to markets? Is that the settled future, or do you think we'll see some, serious risk capital being raised on exchanges?
See, both are happening in my opinion in a very big way. In this financial year, which is yet to get completed, already we have raised around ₹1 trillion in the main board IPOs. Right. And around ₹1 trillion is already approved, and the companies are waiting to come into the market at the appropriate time, part of the pipeline. And another ₹1 trillion which is applied to the regulators and awaiting approval. This is the type of a pipeline we are seeing in the listed exchange space. When we talk of listed exchange space, we cannot omit SMEs. At BSE alone, we have listed more than 100 plus companies who have raised around 5,000 crores in this year alone, till 9 months of this year. So clearly there is a big trend of exchange traded market. Having said that, India today is like many other countries in a big way doing a lot of capital raising through private funding, not in the listed space, but in the space where venture capitals and others are coming in and putting in money. It has to happen. This place is full of unicorns and probably largest largest in terms of number of unicorns. Why it has to happen? When you have so many young, brilliant minds coming out of the colleges, you can't expect all of them to search for a job and get it too. So when a person is intelligent, may not be good in English or whatever it is, but he is intelligent and he has made some studies and he has some graduation in his hand, and he is full of hopes because his well-being is improving day by day, his per capita has increased, giving him a taste for making money and consuming it. So he comes with lot of ideas, and therefore there will be lot of demand for risk capital. And India being in the stage where it is under the able guidance of our honorable ministers and Prime Minister, the country is moving in a path which is very progressive. So clearly people are ready to bet on India and put money as risk capital with these people. So that is a very big market. In fact, I feel there will be a big explosion in both, one feeding the other.
Right. It's a very interesting point that you raise, and I just want to sort of develop that a bit more. When you look at the evolution, if you look at the Sensex constituents from over the decades, and you go back 2-3 decades back, it was heavily dominated by industrials. Today it's more services, financials and others. Would you hazard a guess how things will look like in 10-20 years from now?
Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball. I will not hazard a guess as to which industry will come or which sector will come. But what I can say is, Sensex being a reflection of the market evolving, there will be a lot of new sectors, new age businesses and lines of activities coming in, which will dominate the index. See, we were agrarian economy at one point of time. Then we tried our hand with manufacturing. Today we are big in services and our technological capabilities. So it's an evolution. Clearly it will take us to a different place. What it will be, I will not be able to hazard a guess unless and until I get a crystal ball in my hand.
No. Always good to know from people in the thick of things that, obviously, if we knew where the market is going to go in 10 years, we will not be doing what we're doing, as they always say. So that aside, just purely from a perspective of today's listings will be tomorrow's Sensex constituents. Therefore,
correct.
More from a understanding of what you think are those kind of. It's just an ask. I mean, it's your answer is absolutely valid. There is no way to predict, but certainly the constituents, 10 or 20 years from now will be different and probably quite different from where they are today. If you were to well, let's not take a 20-year crystal ball gazing, but if you were to narrow it down over the next few years, your thoughts in terms of sector performance, not only in terms of stock performance, but I want to understand first from a macro perspective, because you do interact with companies, and what do you think is happening in terms of corporate performance, and then maybe we can discuss sector stock performance. So broad thoughts. Are companies how are companies performing from a macro perspective today?
Certainly the index is going up.
Yes.
The companies are therefore performing well. It's a very clear indication where it does not require too much of an intelligence to answer that question. Which sectors will perform well, which sectors will not perform well, we just don't look at it that way. Are we very positive about the market outlook? It is yes, because of the reasons that I talked about. One is the demographic profile, second is the growing GDP, and third, clarity of policy reforms and direction. 4, a co-created regulatory atmosphere in the capital market side, which is making it conducive for people who look for transparency and access to come into the market. These all make me feel that overall the performance is going to be extremely good. Which sector will individually perform? It's anybody's guess.
Just to pick on that demographic piece a little bit more. I mean, you mentioned two parts. One is just now what you mentioned in terms of demographics. I think the age of the consumer, the age of the innovator, rising income levels and so on and so forth. That great India consumption story is still secular and still on, despite the fact that this year has been a little...
It is still on, and if you look at the recent GST reform, which our Honorable Finance Minister brought in, the consumptions have gone up around $1 trillion.
Yeah.
So clearly the consumption story is on, and it has to be on. I'll tell you what my thought process here are. We are talking about a $2,000 per capita. Is it too high? It is not. A country like Indonesia has a better per capita. If you look at India today, in terms of technology, in terms of this new age companies and artificial intelligence and other areas and financial markets, we are super advanced. There is no country which can fathom that they can introduce just like this UPI or just like this T+1. I'm just giving you 2 examples. The way the market microstructure is built in India, many countries cannot think about it. Whereas in terms of infrastructure, if you look at India, physical infrastructure, there is a lot many things that have to happen, clearly making it possible for us to think that there is a good amount of investment that needs to come in. In this type of an atmosphere, when the per capita is at this stage, every additional rupee that comes into the per capita typically will go into consumption of normal day-to-day goods.
Yes.
Because now it is at the level of a threshold where you have not become affluent enough to think of very different types of consumption. You are not on a very meager scale where you have to fend for yourself by buying rice with that 1 rupee or buying dal with that 1 rupee. You have crossed that stage, but you are yet to be on the other stage. In this part, it goes into some amount of bigger consumption in white goods, vehicles, house. That is where the economy will grow in a big way. Therefore, the consumption story, in my opinion, is very, very strong. Maybe that is one of the reasons why the financial assets growth, if you compare it with real assets growth, while financial assets have already surpassed real assets in many ways, still the real asset growth is very strong in India. It's not just financial assets which are growing. Because of this reason, every marginal additional rupee got into the per capita goes towards consumption in a big way today. That's the opinion of mine.
This financial assets, the RBI recent points that they've been making, and I think there's a lot of value in looking at the flow of funds data, savings rate of the. Yes, it's quite reasonably split between real assets and financial assets. Also a call back to the point you made earlier about some of these digital gold products, etc. How much do you see gold as a competition to equity? And you think that investors are changing, or has there, obviously the performances of metals, including today's in the recent past, has been very, very strong. So is there a change in appetite between commodities, mostly precious metals, and stocks? Do you think that is something to watch for?
So here I am a bit skeptical about my own answer, because how much I can depend on publicly available data to decide my reply, I sometimes get into a confusing situation. Why do I say that? Hypothetically, let us take that in a specific area, banks and the permitted importers of gold import X tons of gold in a year. The total, rather the net sale of gold in that area only should be that much or less than that.
Yes.
Somehow it looks to me that it is not so. The net sale of gold is much more than the total imports that have happened. So where this net sale has happened from? Where it has come from? So the very fact the net sale, at least optically, looks higher than what the permitted imports were, means there are other means of this precious metal entering into the market in a way. It is possible, or it is just my optics, I may be wrong. Clearly, therefore, data will not help me in giving a reply to you. Optics will help. Optically, what I find is, if it is Akshaya Tritiya, there is a long queue outside many shops, at least in 3 states I have seen. In Tamil Nadu I have seen, in Karnataka I have seen, in Andhra I have seen. In these places, therefore, the interest of people to get and buy gold is much, much, much higher than putting their money into financial assets. Well, we are not capable of telling whether they are doing right or wrong. But what from an economics perspective you will think is, if they buy gold, they are keeping it at home. Is it productively generating further work or capital creation or consumption or any cycle it helps? The answer appears to be not so greatly. Well, there may be some few goldsmiths and gold shops and the employees there, and they getting income and they paying income tax. All that is fine. But if that same money were to have been put in capital creation for, say, infrastructure creation, would it have given a bigger multiplier? The answer appears to be yes. So at least in many of the states, traditionally, Kerala is another state.
Yes.
Where gold consumption is very, very high, optically at least. Numbers may show something different because of the reasons which I said. So I feel still the crave for physical asset, particularly gold, is very high. I am able to understand the craving for buying a house for themselves. Why? Because people were living on rented house till now. Now the status of living is going up thanks to the country's progress. They want to buy a house for themselves, I am able to understand. But gold is something which I have always found it very difficult to comprehend.
Quite interesting. I think you're absolutely right, because it's a net imported commodity, any net spend that we do on gold essentially goes overseas. So in that sense, the money doesn't in effect, the money doesn't stay in the country. So you're absolutely right. It's while it looks like an investment, but from a balance of payments perspective, it's actually a drag on the economy. So yes, over time we'll know whether those investment choices are right, but macroeconomically it does look like a bit of a drag. If I were to go back to where we were in terms of just the stock market and the view on sectors and so on, various studies have looked at market cycles. As you mentioned, there's the cycles of the market, crisis and boom and bust and so on. So if you were to look at investors today and give them an advice, especially those who are maybe in their 20s or 30s and looking to build their corpus, what would you tell them about making investments in equities? Horizon-wise, or what is the kind of approach they should have?
See, I have my advice for a very long time has been very consistent in this area. Trade what you understand and understand what you trade.
Right.
That means what? Do not trade what you do not understand. Try to understand before you start even thinking of trading. That's what it means. So I typically put it as trade what you understand, understand what you trade. If I were to be pushed to give a slightly more deeper and simpler advice instead of philosophical one, I tell people, particularly youngsters, because this country is full of youngsters, which is a very great thing, and many of them are curious about the markets and they want to try their hand with the market. I tell them that there are always baby steps when you start walking. You don't run a marathon when you are 1 year old. You develop yourself to get into that place. So for you, typically, it will be better if you were to go to a mutual fund, and not in any scheme, any mutual fund. In a good mutual fund, probably in a large cap scheme or in an index fund, you put your money. There you don't have to understand too much.
Right.
If you simply understand the concept of a passive investment, well diversified portfolio, minimum diversifiable risk, you are done. You can put your money there. And then start understanding what are the components, what are the individual companies, how do they perform. Then you graduate. So if you are a novice, you should try your hand in financial markets, because that is good for you, good for the country. It channelizes, it brings stability to the country, capital market.
Sure.
But not with individual stocks where you may require some more expertise, not with any other fancy instrument, probably mutual fund. And even in mutual fund, not with any type of scheme. Then tomorrow you will lose money and say mutual fund schemes are not performing well. For you, it will be better if you go for a large cap or an index fund. Put your money with a good renowned AMC. You are safe to start with. That's what I generally tell people.
I want to ask, if you don't mind, some questions more related to your own personal career. You started out in, I think, industrial finance, old school finance in some sense, project finance and stuff like that. Then exchanges, back to banking, back to exchanges. What has driven you from a career point of view?
If I were to tell you I was aware of what I am doing, I'm great brains and all, that will all be lie, pure lie. When I look back, when you start with Indian Overseas Bank, that's nothing big. A clerk-cum typist, BSRB, you pass the exam, you get into it. A clerical job in bank is considered as great thing in those days. Probably I should have continued and lived there happily thereafter and retired. Something in me did not permit me to stay quiet. In the 3 years, I completed the exam for banker, CAIIB. Sitting in Tamil Nadu, I completed my Hindi exams, Hindi typing, Hindi shorthand. Then what do you do now? You have nothing more to learn. So somebody told me, why you are not trying a probationary officer's exam? Then I went and tried and I got in SBI. SBI PO, when you are hardly any age, 23, 24, was those days a big job. And if you complete 2 years of probation, for CAIB you will get 3 increments. And in those days, SBI probationary officer was paying more than grade B officer of RBI. It is one of the coveted jobs. I am not able to fathom why I left that job and joined IDBI as a grade A officer. I don't know. Something in me made me feel that I should come out of my home state, see other parts of the country. Why should I not try? I am too young. Let me try new things. IDBI was looking very big to me. Country was growing. Large infrastructure products, the duration by which it will become profitable is very long. So naturally, individual capital cannot take care of those needs, all those thought process. Very interesting to hear, just a shifted job. 7 years I was in IDBI, the traditional project financing and whatnot. When IDBI was given the mandate to set up NSE, I went behind the team which was going and said, please let me also, and I joined them. And I spent long time there, 20 years I spent. I grew a lot as a person in terms of knowledge on capital markets, working closely with the regulators because they were also born almost the same time, formulating lot of regulations together, seeing all of them fructifying into actually the public wealth creation role of a stock exchange. I should have continued and retired there. But in 2014, I felt uncomfortable. After 20 years, where I thought I will retire, I was feeling out of place. Maybe that was not the organization for which I started working 20 years before. So I went back to banking. Global banking is very different from domestic banking, and it was a very serious.
That again.
Yeah,
That is a big change.
big change.
Yes.
Because now you start working in a matrix organization as a country COO with no prior global banking experience. To go there to be plugged at the top, and then you start running from the day one. It's a different experience. And I think I did it well, because at the end of my 8.25 years career, while I should have retired at 60, Bank of America was kind enough to say, please don't go away, continue with us. And I was continuing, and I would have continued.
Right.
And then the offer from BSE came. People asked me, have you seen Yes Minister? I said yes. What is the connection? They said that when the minister makes a foolish decision, Sir Humphrey tells him, Minister, you are too courageous.
Yes.
So why are you telling me this? Sundar, you are too courageous. That's what people told me when I was joining BSE. When I asked them why, look, you know what, 150 years, 25 years, no beginning with derivatives, lot of problems, the building is old, the facilities are poor, infrastructure is not there, employees are unhappy, no work culture, poor morale, no product. Why are you joining there? I said, precisely for that reason I am joining. Let me try something. If it works, it works. If it does not work, nobody is going to blame me. At least let me give a try. So it is all, I should say, more a sort of a maverick tendency to try whether I can do something, than of any calculated knowledge-based decision as to thinking, wow, this is the pro, this is the con, let me think, and I am God's gift to humankind, I am cat's whiskers. No, nothing like that. It's just the simple curiosity of a normal human being. Can I do something here and see whether it works? That's what I think has shaped my life till now.
Excellent. You behave more like those entrepreneurs that you were telling me about a little while ago. Willing to take a risk with your own career. Fantastic. I think that was someone like me. I've spent my entire career out of college. I joined an asset management company, and today I'm an asset manager. I've never done anything out of this. So completely respect what you do, moving into different roles. What does a typical day look like as the CEO of a stock exchange?
I start very early in the day. I generally get up at around 4 or 4:30 maximum. I have my own individual preferences in the morning, and I reach office, if I am in Mumbai, between 8:15 to 8:20. My first meeting generally starts from 8:30 in the day. Typically, if I am in office, every half an hour maximum there will be a meeting. Sometimes every 20 minutes there will be a meeting. I have my lunch generally at 10:30 because I skip my breakfast. So 10:30 or 11 is max when I have my breakfast, my lunch. That's the only one meal mainly I look forward to. After that, I am not interested in food. That typically happens with some of my office people sitting around and me having food. Evenings are not certain. If I am still in the office in the evening, by around 7:30 I try to wind up. I'll reach home by 8:30. I cannot think of going to bed before 11 because I have my own things to do post reaching home. So basically I sleep between 11 to 4, you can say. This is my typical day if I am in Mumbai. If I am not in Mumbai, I am at the mercy of whatever meetings have been fixed for me, which can be very tough.
Understood. I'm going to ask you a question which could be from BSE experience or any of the other leadership roles that you have had over this fantastic career. What are some of those hard leadership experiences that you've had? Difficult choices, or maybe like almost like a crisis situation. What advice can you give to young managers, young professionals out there in terms of how to prepare for the future?
Two parts I will make out of it. One is from a corporate perspective, because as a CEO or as a leader, you is equal to corporate. So you have to think from a corporate perspective and from an individual perspective. From a corporate perspective, if you want to make a difference, you should find out what is the gap that is in existence in the stakeholders' expectation. If you identify a gap and if you are able to fill it up within the existing walls, 4 walls of law, then you are bound to succeed. How will you find the gap? How will you find the need? You have to talk to them. Voice of customer therefore becomes the next important thing to find out what the gap is. But will the voice be very coherent? Not necessarily. You have to read between the lines in the voice to clearly understand what the gap is. I'll just give you one example. Why did NSE succeed at the time? The gap in the market was, to become a broker was not easy. Broking as a profession was not available to all, and it was restricted supply.
Right.
NSE made it available on tap. Bingo, it succeeded.
Sure.
Find the gap through the voice of customer, which may not be coherent. You will make a dent as far as the corporate is concerned. As far as an individual, which you are, because you are what you are, what is most important in life is be humble. You think you are big because you have achieved bigger heights. Nobody else thinks that you are big. If you think you are permanent, you think you are permanent. Nobody else thinks that you are permanent. So beware and be aware clearly that you are one another normal, simple human being. हाथ जोड़ना, sorry for shifting to Hindi, हाथ जोड़ना बहुत जरूरी है. सर झुकना बहुत जरूरी है. The more you climb up, more humble you should be. The moment you are humble, you will learn a lot of lessons from everybody. And life is full of learning. Till the last breath we need to learn. With that attitude we start our life. We will listen to all. We may not do what others tell.
Right.
We may use our mind, but we will never refuse to listen to anybody. We will never come across as arrogant. We will come across as humble, ready to listen, ready to do what is good for others, not just for good for yourself. This is the most important lesson I have learned. This is what I think is the responsibility, is the reason for BSE's success.
Sure. Thank you. You've been quite famous in, and quite vocal in talking about some of your guiding principles and some of your sort of, including what you just now said. Would you take a moment and expound on that? Sort of what are your personal guiding principles, or your, sort of what are your, what's your North Star? What are the principles that you work with?
So my principle, as I said, is principle should come first.
Right.
Profit should be a consequence. Whether it is personal self or it is the corporate which you represent. Never do anything unethical. Never get into any business which is not right for humanity. Never do anything which is not in the interest of the stakeholders. Don't cut corners at all. And if you have to obey, everybody has a boss, right? I may be the boss of all my KMPs. My KMPs will be the boss of all the departments under them. But I have a boss in the name of a board, and I have a boss in the name of my regulator. And they all have their bosses, right? They have their boards, sure. They have their governments. So we should understand that we are part of a chain. We help in governing some people and we do get governed. We need to have that respect. And once you have, and once you stick to ethical principles in life, I think life is okay.
Perfect. I'm going to ask you you said you go home and then you have personal time, maybe weekends. What is your unwind philosophy? What's your philosophy outside work? What is it that keeps you going?
I read a lot.
Anything in particular? Books, podcasts recently, anything that you've heard?
No, not the type of books which you would typically expect every
why not?
CEO to say.
No, we should, please.
I have been tutored by one of my teachers in Sanskrit for 12 years. So my interest lies in reading more of Upanishads and scriptures. That is where I spend my time. Part of it goes into yoga and meditation. Part of it goes into reading scriptures.
One book, scripture book, or
Chandogya Upanishad.
Chandogya Upanishad. By? Whose translation?
I don't read translations.
Oh,
I
you read
read
the
original, and I read what Adi Shankara has written as Bhashyam for it.
Excellent.
I follow his school of philosophy for me, and that is where and there are people who have written Tippani to
Yes.
the Bhashyam of Adi Shankara. That's what I concentrate on. I don't read a translation. I try to restrict myself to the original because no language can be a substitute to any other language. The emotional nuance expressed in a language is very particular to that language.
Right.
So therefore, it is better know these type of scriptures are read in the original language.
Absolutely. I think Upanishads and especially Adi Shankara's commentaries it's been a long time since. Maybe I need to go back and reread some of that myself. It's well worth revisiting and to dig it out of my library. What's your own personal asset allocation strategy? Are you all in on stocks? Do you do something else?
I don't own any stocks. It's all mutual funds.
And
well balanced between debt and equity. Debt was all acquired 3 years before the capital gain problem came in for debt. So typically that's what it is. And one house where I live in.
Sure.
That is my real estate thing.
You mentioned travel for work, which you do a lot of. Personal travel, what's your favorite places? Anything that stands out to you to say that, this is where I would really like to visit again?
Last 3 years I have not traveled for personal work.
Before that, something which stood out to you?
Before that, I have traveled a lot. In my younger days, I have traveled to the nooks and corners of South India and lot of parts in some parts in North India. I have visited a lot of temples which are nothing but architectural splendors and engineering marvels. I always admire the greatness and knowledge levels of Indians 1000 years, 1200 years before. So those places I have visited a lot, and I would love to visit any number of times, particularly some of the places in Tanjore and around Tanjore.
Yeah. For those of the podcast audience who are in Mumbai, there are direct flights from here to Trichy, which is the easiest way to reach Tanjore. Absolutely. I did this about a year ago. Fantastic. A few days. You're absolutely right. It's absolutely brilliant. And it's what I find really interesting is, especially in the Tamil Nadu architecture, temple architecture, is how different it is from everything else, and it's a different world. And I'm of course also a Tamilian, and it sort of echoes to me personally. But even otherwise, when you travel around the country, you do see that completely different. I think world class, or better than world class. I think there isn't too much in the world which comes up to that standard.
Recently, I saw a book. Though I read only the Google review, I didn't read the book. It is about Chola Empire.
Okay.
Chola Empire is one of the Chola dynasty was one of the dynasties which ruled for a very, very, very long time before CE, deep into the CEs. Probably they are one of the very few dynasties who have left a huge number of inscriptions, stone inscriptions, detailing clearly their history and their contribution to art, architecture and engineering marvels. It's mind-boggling when you read. Even the review was very mind-boggling for me. Some of them I was able to relate because I have traveled a lot. More like a vagabond with nothing in hand, I have traveled from village to village, seeing some of the village temples, which many people might have missed, because typically people go on a vacation for a week and see prominent temples and see them and come back. When you go into the interiors, you get to see many more things, which I have done. So therefore, I was able to relate to some of the things which were mentioned in the review about the book. I bought the book and I just brushed through it to give it to somebody else, because I generally will not be finding enough time to read that book in entirety. But I was very amazed.
Absolutely. It's very interesting because I studied in a typical CBSE type of syllabus, which focuses, which may have had one lesson on South India, or the Chola Empire, or just brush past. And it's the only empire which had overseas presence. It's amazing. It was the only seafaring Indian empire.
And their shipbuilding techniques were very unique. How they used the tender wood to make a very strong ship is something to learn from. Hindu Business Line has come out with a coffee table book, Chola Dynasty.
Oh,
I read that.
okay.
I read that. It is a very interesting book. That coffee table book, if one gets, they should read it.
Thank you. That's a great recommendation for myself to pick up. Something about you which people don't know. Can I ask a very personal question? What is it that you can share that maybe not too many people know about you?
I would not know what others do not know about me, so I will not be able to comment on it. See, all of us have an opinion about ourselves, which may or may not be the opinion of others about us. I, by and large, think I am an open book. Like, for example, what I eat, what I drink, what I do, what my timings are, everything is known to my office. So, typically, I do not know what others will not know about me, about my interest in Sanskrit, my interest in Upanishads. By and large, I think people know about me.
Fantastic. I would like to invite you. I mean, if there's something that, in terms of closing thoughts that you would like to leave behind, the audience that we are listening to are by and large people who are interested in capital markets. That's the reason we are having this conversation. If you were to just give them a personal message, what would you like to tell?
I would tell them that you are one of the most luckiest and fortunate people across the globe God has created. Why? You are in the right time in the right country. You have not seen the poverty which people like us in our younger age have seen.
No.
You are born almost with a silver spoon in your mouth, and you are going to have a diamond spoon in your mouth soon, the way the country is progressing. Make the best use of it. The country is striving hard to make your lives better. You please contribute to the society and make it even better. Here is a market, here is a country which is going to progress so well. This decade is going to be that of India. This century is going to be that of India. First, some 17th century, 18th century people say it was Europe, then it became US. This is for Asia and this is for India. You are at the right place and right time. So think clearly well, invest carefully, try to read and understand what you are doing. You are going to be making a very good living and very good contribution to a very great society which has nice spiritual content and nice wealth as well. That would be my message.
Thank you. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for taking your time out. I think we're well past your 20-minute meeting time. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.